Well, I don't know. Maybe we just bring people up here and have a discussion, and I can always make the. Oh, who's this? MS Strong's coming up. I'm gonna do. Ah, ah. Hi, MS Strong.
Peace.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good today. How are y'all?
I'm pretty good. We got a lot of snow here.
I'm fantastic. We're just
Nice.
getting snow.
There was some snow up in Ohio and Illinois today. Um, the JD Vance thing was supposedly somebody from his motorcade had some kind of an event or something.
Oh,
And the two things that broke besides Matt Gaetz was Trump is back in talks with Putin about selling Alaska to him, which should concern y'all greatly.
it was always the plan.
Yep.
He's
He,
always wanted Alaska. As soon as it started melting, that was the plan.
oh yeah, he's wanted it for a long time, and um, oh crap, give me a minute. Put out by I wanted to explain last week. I had put some messages in the chat about what was going on in the U.S., and I wanted to explain to all your listeners that because y'all were talking about things that affected y'all, that I was just putting out things because there were a couple comments saying that they thought that the chat needed to focus more on Canada, and I just wanted to explain what my role is. Sometimes it's just breaking news down here, so y'all are prepared.
Yeah, yeah.
and
It's good. It's good to share, but we do want to keep it on Canada too. So we'll
yeah,
focus on both.
right. And Walmart here, which I know y'all have
Yeah.
announced today. Did y'all get that?
Yeah, we did. They intend on raising prices to keep up with the tariffs.
Yeah. And I have one of those monthly subscriptions, so I get deliveries, and it went up. And
Already though,
uh huh,
the tariffs aren't even in place yet.
I know.
Seems like a
And
bit of a,
A lot of companies are doing it to prep for it because they're buying stuff right now cheap and
oh,
selling it
okay.
for higher so that they can make more money right now because they're gonna start losing money afterwards too.
Right.
Low, do y'all have Lowe's lumber?
We have
Uh,
some lows.
some,
Yeah,
yeah.
Lowe's has done it too.
So the only thing is I don't know if because ours is run by our corporate offices here, though. Like we have Canadian corporate offices for a lot of these places, not the American corporate offices. So
That's
just because the prices go up in the States doesn't mean it's going to go up here because we're not experiencing the tariffs.
yeah. I
It all depends on the product and stuff like that, though, too. Because if it's stuff that's coming from the States to Canada to be stored in warehouses, then yes, that will probably happen.
and that's what I wondered is if
Yeah.
they ever like if if part of y'all stuff ever comes through our ports to get it at a better price and then splits off. So
Yeah. In some
Well, we
cases,
do.
I think it just depends on the company.
I think it will definitely encourage other countries to look at other ports, right?
yeah,
And look at other pathways and channels, right? And
Yeah.
that's what happened in the Depression. They raised the tariffs so high that people were just looking elsewhere.
Yeah.
And
Um,
I got a notice today from the power company and saying that my monthly allotment will go up starting this bill.
the other thing we
So,
have to think of, like, so this is the other reason why I think that it might not be completely affecting us, like the tariffs down in the States, because anything that we get here, our packaging has to be specific. It has to
Mm-hmm.
have French and English on it. And a lot of the stuff down in the States doesn't have the French and the English stuff in it. So we would have
Yeah.
specific stuff that would come to us from the manufacturers with those specific guidelines on it. So that's why I think like it's kind of iffy, but yeah, I mean it's something to look at, right? For
No, I
sure.
would totally agree because all of ours comes with Spanish.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I'll drop down once y'all get going if you
We're
have enough
going.
people.
we're going.
we,
I,
Our
we
guests,
yeah, our guest isn't here.
oh,
so we're
okay.
just gonna wing it. So, so we're really excited. We were talking a little while ago. Justin Trudeau announced today that for 2 months we're not going to have to pay GST. So, thank you, Mr. Trudeau. Great timing.
Hmm.
Yep.
Just in time for Christmas.
Hey,
Yay!
Radical.
Hello.
Is he going to pop
I don't know.
up? Or he is up. Is he going to
So
talk?
anybody, if you want to come up and chat, we're just gonna chat politics. Let's talk Canadian
Hey
politics. What's
guys.
going on in our world?
What's on your mind, Radical?
Um, well, we're any way we look at it, whatever happens in America is going to affect us on the long term. The only thing we could hope for at this point is that some of this stuff doesn't go through. But the reality is, if he's in, it is all going to go through, and it will affect us at our bottom line.
True.
Most certainly.
Yeah. Yep. I guess I'll just do my little tech reminders. Just a reminder that tapping is clapping and sharing is caring. So if you share the live out, easiest way to do that is if you hold your finger down on this box right here, another box will pop up and you can go share, or send. And then you can we also have our gift goal up here. We are part of Live Fest. So any of the gifts that you get towards it counts towards our points for Live Fest. We have a little heart right next to our name if you're already following us. It's 1 coin to just help boost the channel a little bit and get us out onto the FYP. And we have subscriptions as well. So we have a subscriber goal of 15 to get to still. If you want to help with that, that would be fantastic. It is $5.49 a month. And I think there's a discount right now still for your first month. And then lastly, today's whatever we chat about today is going to end up going onto our YouTube channel. I will do that tonight/tomorrow morning.
Sounds great. Thanks. You are amazing at tech. You're like a god, a tech goddess.
Somebody has background noise that is drowning you out right now.
I
I
just
don't
need
know
a
who
few
it
minutes.
is.
Be back in a second. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, for sure, no worries.
Hey, T-Jack. What's up, Radical? Just like to say hi before I dip out real quick. I'm not
Hi.
leaving. I just got to bring in some groceries. But
Yeah,
like, I'd like to talk about also the U.S. Issue that Radical brought up about the economy being tied to the United States. Very
yeah,
much is, very much always will be. Trump or no Trump, we might lose a little bit, but like with trade partnerships, like the one we just signed with Indonesia, I think that opens up our market quite a bit and adds another stream from there. I think there's also other free trade agreements that we have. I mean, Doug Ford and company are screaming to get out of it, but like with Mexico directly, we have some agreements as well. So I think we can weather the storm in Canada, and I think our personal future looks pretty bright coming out of this last turn. Um, I hope they extend the GST break permanently. I don't think, I think we're taxed enough. So, I mean, that's a discussion as well. But anyways, I think is it for just a moment.
Thanks.
Hi, it's me, Francis. Good evening,
Hi.
everyone. I have to
Hello.
leave. I have to head out for a volunteer thing that I'm doing, but I just wanted to say that I'm actually enjoying myself this afternoon on my page here, looking at how these conservatives are absolutely frickin' twisting themselves up over the GST pause, because that's not good. It's a crumb, and it's just a bribe with our own tax money. So I'm asking them to apply that to their own carbon pricing issue. It's actually funny if it wasn't kind of so pathetic. So it's the hypocrisy is unbelievable.
Right.
It's just amazing. Anyhow, that's all I just wanted to say. I just wanted to jump in because I know your guest isn't here and I do have to get going, but all the best to everyone. Thank you.
Thanks. Have a good one. That's funny. That's funny if you think about that. Yeah. They're flipping out over GST being taken away for 2 months, and they want to get rid of a different kind of tax. Like, what?
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Did anybody else want to? We're just gonna talk Canadian politics. What's going on in Canada right now?
What's going on in Canada is Danielle
Yeah.
Smith is dismantling Alberta while we sit back and watch and do nothing. That's what's happening in
Agreed.
Canada.
Absolutely. She should be disbarred or something.
I mean,
It,
the amazing part of the disconnect, and I know it's manufactured disconnect with the right. I mean, they have JT under a microscope and yet continue to just be completely oblivious to what's actually happening on the ground in Canadian provinces. Our healthcare is being dismantled. Our education is being dismantled on purpose.
Also, did you hear about Doug Ford taking $25 million out of education in Ontario?
But that's been the game book and the standard playbook. And I'll tell you a quick story. I got in touch with when COVID came around. Mrs. Radical was working for the Calgary School Board, and I called OH&S to say, what are her options as far as what she can do? We know that we're entitled to refuse work. That is deemed unsafe, and we're basically sending her into a chemical suit. And when I made that phone call to OH&S, I was transferred directly to the Alberta Board of Education. Because I said my wife works with the school board and I want to ask some questions. That gal at OH&S, she didn't go, oh, wait a minute, I'm not sure what, or maybe I should send you to, she knew as soon as I said education, and I was transferred to the Ministry of Education from OH&S, which is supposed to be an independent board of the government.
No, it wasn't the Ministry of Education. It was the Ministry of, wasn't it Health
Yeah.
or Labor? Health.
No. Ministry of Education is where they
Was
sent me
it?
as soon as yeah.
Okay.
Now, when I called the MLA, one of the things that he was trying to pin on me so they could use this in their tactics is to try and get me to say that, oh, so you're mad at the school board. Oh, so you're upset with the school board. Oh, this is about the school board. And I kept going to him, no. Why is it that supposedly a body that is supposedly independent of the government is transferring me to the government to have my questions answered? And the guy goes, well, no, that didn't happen. And I was like, dude, don't tell me it didn't happen. That is exactly what happened. An independent body sent me to back to a government agency. Well, I'm the head of OH&S and that isn't happening. And I said, dude, you're either fucking lying or you have no idea what is happening under your regime. Because I'm telling you, this is exactly what happened today. So this sort of politics has been going on in Alberta for a while, and it's been going across North America for a while. And what we're seeing is the culmination of essentially 20 to 30 years of work to dismantle our government.
I agree 100%.
Absolutely.
I also think that Doug Ford has to, if he calls an early vote, I think that's wonderful. And I hope that we get the support that we need to get them out, because our healthcare, our education, everything in Ontario is diminishing quickly. And just not to talk about myself, but I have a personal medical issue that I cannot get help for until I'm 64, which is in January. And it's an important medical issue, but they don't cover it anymore in Ontario unless you're over 65.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yep.
It is crazy. The stuff that they're dropping from healthcare is important all across Canada. But I think, just my personal opinion, I think the conservative provinces are worse off.
Yeah, for sure.
Still got to
Well,
give
I
we,
agree.
Manitoba a
yeah.
chance. They're just getting started.
That's the same thing in the United States. Exactly the same thing.
And New
Yep.
Brunswick just turned over. I'd just like to point out very, very important things that Grandma Sandy?
Just call me Sandy.
Hey, Sandy. Was bringing up, but like you have to look at the voter turnout, and that's the catalyst for failure for progressives, is that there's no turnout. Nobody shows up. You know, last time there was 38% turnout at the Ontario ballot boxes.
That's correct.
In the
And that,
by-election,
yeah,
recent
that voter apathy is something that we as Canadians have to get a hold of, because our
Yep.
turnout rates in every election are terrible.
Agreed.
It's
deliberate,
sad.
though. That's deliberate, right? Like, so like
Yep.
at the federal level, I think we had like 69% turnout, about 68%. Some people
Yep.
said 72, but it doesn't matter. Like Germany has like 95, 97. Like France has like in the 90s. Like these countries that are getting things done are doing so with huge turnout of voter percentages. And until we can get a handle on that, I don't think we're going to be able to achieve anything of substance. Not to mention, like I brought this up before, but you have-
Happy, how much do you think that has to do with the American influence on Canadian politics? With their whole,
I think it's more of a global attack. You know, like I know what you're saying. Like it's a trickle down process, but I think like it's a deliberate. Like I think like things like the IDU are more relevant here. Like I think that they're playing a bigger factor in a nefarious way, deliberately sabotaging countries so that they can ride in and be the white knight, so to speak, in the situation.
So you don't think the IDU and the Republicans are kind of running the same playbook?
No. I think that's a tactic to disenfranchise voters and keep people from showing up at the ballot boxes. I think if people believe that it's two wings of the same bird, or it doesn't make a lick of difference one way or another, they're going to be less inclined to show up because it doesn't make a difference in their life. But you can look at the strategies, the policies that were implemented during President Barack Obama's tenure and even Bill Clinton, and then move on to Biden, then compare those to Trump, Bush, any other Republican, and you can see there's a great disparity when it comes to engineering social safety nets or policies that benefit lower middle income earners.
Can I respond to that, Happy? When you see pictures of Danielle Smith with the leaders of whatever is going down over there with like the Republicans, that's a pretty strong message that they're in like collaboration with each other, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But I want to throw this out there and something that applies
Radical,
directly.
just wait, because that was a question for Happy.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry.
That was directed to Happy.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's all part of the same plan. I think they did it. They're destabilizing all sorts of democracies around the world, and I think if you look, there's some research done that we went from like 25% autocratic ruling around the world to now like 72% autocratic ruling, and I think that's not by mistake. I think that's by design, and I think everything that they say about the WEF is true about somebody else, and I think that's who they're following.
But what do you mean by design, Happy? I mean, how much of this has to do with fatigue by our voters, the disingenuousness of our voters? One of the things that I think that the federal Liberals have to do is learn from the mistake, if you could even call it that, of what the Democrats did in the United States. I thought they call it culture wars, going after him being a criminal. No, not at all. I think that was what they needed to do. And yet it came down to, it's the economy, stupid, is what all the pundits are saying down there. And you have thousands of Canadians, hundreds of thousands of Canadians who whine and snivel. Sorry, I don't mean to disrespect people that are tight on the budget, but a lot of Canadians are sitting there going off about the price of eggs, the price of apples, and the price of gasoline while they're shopping 3 days a week at Starbucks for $7 lattes and buying their new trucks and their new. Look at what these stores are going to look like from December 1st on. How can you possibly tell me that a majority of Canadians are suffering? So what I'm suggesting is perhaps that the Liberals need to shy away from some of the things that the Democrats were going after, like rights of individuals and things, and try and get into, we're here about your budget, and this is our plan for the budget. And at the start of the show, you guys were talking about the Trudeau government's reprieve from taxes for 2 months, and how the Conservatives are losing their minds over it. Hit that.
There's an element of the vote. I think
we need to get Trudeau.
Mhm.
The way he speaks in the House of Commons is brilliant, and we gotta start getting him to talk like that on the hustings. And he needs to start campaigning now, like Polyev has been doing for a year and a half.
He's not allowed, and I think that would. So when you sink to their level, I think it takes away from what makes you different. And I think that if we don't have a clear and concise plan to deliver, we will for sure be lost. I do point to the ECOS poll that most recently came out that shows Polyev is losing support, and I think he's down 12 points in that poll, whereas a couple other ones have him sitting at around 22 or whatever. Or sitting pretty where he was before in the majority. So I think it's important to accept the differences that we have between. Sorry, my wife just came in and distracted me with her short shorts.
Oh my god.
Good wifey.
And that's an attentive husband.
Sorry.
No wonder they call you Happy.
I don't know what he said.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna take
Happy,
this.
that was funny.
Okay.
But
Sorry, I just got a phone call.
I lost track of the thought. I think what you're talking about, is the identity politics of what's going on in the United States, and how that kind of pushed centrists away from voting or voting for the Democrats or voting at all. And I think there's some value to that, but it's important to make sure that people can identify with the differences between the parties, so we're not stuck in this whole rut of two wings of the same bird. I think the left parties need to come up with a plan of action, whether that's an official coalition or at least a joint that are implemented in each of their platforms, so that when leftists choose, we know that we can choose somebody that's going to have at least a base level of priorities that will meet the needs of Canadians. So I think when we see that kind of communicating, we'll do a lot better. And I think when people are less disenfranchised, we'll do a lot better as well. So I think it's on us, that's on the politicians, to improve our messaging and kind of make sure that we know the difference between the two parties.
Thanks, Happy. I think Nerdy wants to speak.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, there was just something that you said, and it was because TJack said Trudeau needs to speak like that more often. I agree with that. I 100% agree. Because, like, there's a thing that's happening, like, down in the States where Michelle Obama, when she was on campaign trail with everybody, when they go low, we go high, right? Everybody is saying, no, we can't do that anymore. It hasn't been working at all. We need to go low too. We have to do the low blows too, because that's what's getting the attention. And I think that's we need to hit them with their own stuff. That's the thing,
But
right?
I think that's more somebody like Sean Fraser's job, Anita Anand,
Yeah.
or Chrystia Freeland, or Charlie Angus. You know,
Yeah,
these.
but they're not doing it.
Oh
They
my God!
kind of got
Oh,
it.
Sean
I'm
is.
They've
Sean
kind of
Fraser's doing it.
Sean is, but it's just coming
And
out
Mark
now.
Holland is
And
great too.
we need it like all the
Well,
time, full
in
time.
my opinion, the NDP should be focusing on trying to allure some of those right people who are also socially conscious about like safety nets, you know, because the NDP kind of has an overlap over there where the Liberals don't. Um, and I think that they should collaborate and try to whittle away at that base and start peeling away votes together instead of fighting amongst each other. And I think that that would help a lot as well. And I would like to point
I
out
agree with you.
that the Conservative Party is an official coalition. You know, they amalgamated all the far right,
Yeah.
and right of center parties, right? So that is an official coalition, and we're still here fighting amongst ourselves
You're
about
really great points.
about things that, you know, we can talk about after. We can negotiate those things. So what the differences are between us, we can negotiate those things from a position of power as opposed to looking upwards and begging for scraps.
So,
Does
so,
any
just two real quick things, and then I'll shut up. The idea that, have you ever heard of a guy called Brian Tyler Cohen out of the U.S.? Yeah, Brian, one of his points that he made is that of the 20 top podcasts in the United States, 19 are right or far right podcasts. And what the left and the center left have to do, and I'm not entirely sure how to do it, I'm not good at this stuff, is get control of that and start, because we're the left and center left is struggling on social media.
Yeah.
On the big platforms, not the least of which because they're owned by billionaires and they're controlling the message, and we got to figure out how to get that message out.
Well, we're also really crappy, T-Jack, at coming together. We're really crappy at fundraising. We're really crappy at community.
Well,
Those are three things
Right?
these guys have been playing the long game for a long, long time.
That's
And
right.
they've been doing grassroots fundraising at all. Like they have that in the bag. They're doing it at their churches. They're doing it at their Avon
They're the
parties. They're
school's
doing it
board
all over the place.
trustees.
and
Yeah,
and,
like
and
we
Mrs.
got to
Radical,
get out there.
Mrs. Radical, you're spot on. When you take a look at before Joe Biden was in that disastrous debate, even when Joe Biden was running in 2020, you had the left that was completely fractured, and there were some young, powerful creators online that were not going to vote for Joe and maybe even stay home because of his Palestinian Israeli positions. And my comment to those folks was, so because of that one issue, you're going to let someone else who's just violent and evil and vile and his policies run the gamut of authoritarianism get in?
Oh, I'm
Like,
sorry.
what is that? So you're right, Mrs. Radical. I think trying to get the left to consolidate, like, I have an idea that the Liberals should just cede Vancouver Island to the NDP, for instance. The Liberals should have no chance on Vancouver Island. They can maybe take Toronto, and where it's rich in seat numbers, but Vancouver Island, they don't have a chance of winning a seat. How about just saying, we're going to pull our candidates out of Vancouver Island and the northern British Columbia or what? I'm not saying this is the way to go. I'm just saying, what do you guys think about ceding certain territories to either party that they know they have a better shot of winning?
That's what they did in France.
That's
Oh, really?
yeah.
You can, yeah. So that's what they
Okay.
did. I think they tried it in England too, but France had it's weird how they have the Macron and another president or prime. I can't. Really weird that dynamic over there, but they elected a person. They were going to get Le Pen. Le Pen was about to win, and so what happened is the left strategically ran didn't run against each other,
Okay.
and so everybody who was left would vote for whatever party was furthest left.
Well, we had a mayor in Courtney who was right wing and far right, and he had the Knights of Columbus out in force working for him. And there were three other left leaning candidates that split the vote.
T-Jack,
Yeah, sorry.
did you see my video yesterday that I put out about subverting the right or the left and kind of some of the stuff Putin's been doing and the psyops around that?
No, I had confessed to not seeing that. No.
Oh,
But this comes back to a point I wanted to make earlier that Happy had mentioned that, roughly 70% of governments have swung over to the right in the last little while. And what I wanted to point out earlier is the coordination that's happening between Canadian Conservatives and Republicans in the States. Because if we remember back to the Coots border crossing and the GoFundMe that was set up over that whole thing, both Abbott in Texas and DeSantis in Florida were suddenly super concerned about what was happening with freedom in Canada. Why would two American Republican Southern senators be so concerned about what is happening in Canada at the border?
and they were getting donations from Russia.
Yep. But that's
I
what I'm
don't know.
saying
That
is,
makes no sense.
No,
And
it's totally, that was
Musk,
true.
Elon Musk says that Trudeau is
Yeah.
next.
Yes.
Right?
Well, I mean, Doug Ford bought and paid for him just now.
That's what I
Right?
mean. Like it's adding up to a lot of clandestine activities. It would seem, and I think that a lot of
It
what
would seem.
it would seem, and I think a lot of what the rhetoric we heard, the paranoia, the delusions, is like, are they doing the same thing we're doing? Are they doing it? We need to accuse them of something so that we know where we stand. Like it's like the biggest projection. Like it's.
Did you guys hear that P. Diddy had Justin Trudeau at his house? And Justin Trudeau
Yep.
was on video with a little
Apparently.
girl.
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Well, it was
I
a
just
comment
saw a
from a
video.
conservative hack on one of my videos I posted yesterday.
I follow.
I'm sure.
I want to go
you know
back
how
to
you know
a point.
that isn't true. That isn't true because if Trudeau had gotten on a plane to go to a Diddy party, there'd be all this turmoil about Trudeau taking a plane and all of these fences surrounding it.
Right.
Well, that's just nonsense right from the start.
Oh,
Well,
absolutely.
there was just a video that came out that had Justin Trudeau on Epstein list, and I'm like, Jesus, these people, like, I can't listen to this shit anymore.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. I wanted to go back to a point. Happy, you said something earlier about it was something to do with like the world and going right wing and like down with democracy kind of thing, like the downfall of democracy. I'm pretty sure you said something like that, right?
Yeah, talking
Okay.
about autocratic rules and stuff. Autocracy.
Yes. Okay, so a big creator down in the States that I follow actually posted a video about this the other day. There was a Grandma Sandy, I'm just going to mute you because you got a lot of background noise right now. Okay, so there was an article. It was actually posted. It's from Big Think, which is like I don't know what kind of website it is, but it's an article that was written about Yuri Bezmenov, and he was a KGB. He defected from the KGB and came to Canada back in the 70s. And this is something he actually predicted was going to happen. And it's the downfall of American democracy, which affects us as well, obviously, because we're so interconnected. But there's like 3 steps to it, and demoralization is like the first step of it. And that's the big thing that the entire United States is going through right now. So one of the things that it says on here, like demoralization is a process that is irreversible. It's people are programmed to think and react to certain stimuli in a certain pattern. You cannot change their mind, even if you expose them to authentic information. Even if you prove that white is white and black is black, you still cannot change the basic perception and logic of their behavior. So that's already happening across the board in the United States and in Canada. And then once the person is demoralized, they go into or destabilization. And if you look at like the choices that like the Americans are picking right now for their cabinet, like you're totally going to destabilize the entire process,
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So
Here's a quote right from Bezmenov. As I mentioned before, exposure to true information does not matter anymore. A person who was demoralized is unable to assess true information. The facts tell nothing to him. Even if I shower him with information, with authentic proof, with documents, with pictures, even if I take him by force to the Soviet Union and show him a concentration camp, he will refuse to believe it until he receives a kick in his butt. When a military boot crashes his then he will understand, but not before that. That's the tragedy of the situation.
yeah. And the last stage is crisis. So it would take only up to 6 weeks to send a country into crisis. And crisis would bring a violent change of power, structure, and economy. And it would be followed by this last stage, which is normalization. Everybody just thinks that that's the normal way. And I think with how our world, like, I know that, like it didn't start with the gas chambers, right? It didn't start with those.
No.
But I think that because of our hyper our world today is so much more connected. I think that there's like it's sped up. It's speeding up, and it wouldn't take like years and years and years like it did in Germany. It could take a year or two to get to that point,
I think the inverse is also correct on that one as well. I think maybe the assessment of it being permanent and irreversible might have been premature. It would be impossible to determine that from that time frame, especially with all. It's really ironic that came out in 1984. I didn't realize you had your hand up. Sorry, Mrs. Radical.
That's okay. I just think, we look at our cell phones and how conveniently they were almost given out like candy in 2007, like 2012, was it? 2014, where we all got our cell phones and our apps. They were handed out like candy. We hand our data out like candy all over the place. They have all of our data points. We've given them all out happily. We give the millionaires and the billionaires all our data, and we're on these apps giving away everything. And we're also
Um,
distracted, incredibly distracted by these apps. And we're not out touching glass. We're not out planning. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We're not out looking and shaking hands with our neighbors and talking to them.
Yeah.
there's an app. Oh, go ahead, Abby.
No, please do. By all means.
I was talking with an American friend of mine on a panel, and he says there is a website that you can go to. No, I can't remember. I think it's rev.org. You can see where you voted in the last few elections, and they showed where you voted from. It's all public knowledge. People have access to this, and I think that's absolutely fucking terrifying, to be
Yeah.
frankly honest
We
with
used to
people.
have something called the white pages, and literally, if you understand how the polling stations work, and you can cross-reference the white pages to a voting year, you can pretty much determine where somebody is, anyways.
Yeah.
For me, I'm not so worried about that kind of stuff. Like, I'm a little worried about what the Hollywood actors went on strike for a bit. Not as it applies to them, but as it applies to the rest of the world. So to getting back to Nerdy's point just a few moments ago about the oversaturation of this despondent information that really tears and breaks away a person's soul and their will to really fight against an oppressive system. I think that's what you're indicating happened with this destabilization, demoralization, right? They just beating you down with that. But I think like when you look at quality of life, you can get a sense of optimism when all of these factors become realities, like 4-day work weeks, 3-day work weeks, or something like that. Like, more equitable representation as far as distribution of resource money within Canada type thing. Like there's a lot of positives in the future for Canada, so long as we stay the course. And if we don't let these people bully us into submission, we can continue to fight. Um, you know, I'm still reading this article, and it's
Yeah. Oh,
crazy.
yeah,
It's a
you're on it
really
on
good one.
Big Think. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's this just kind of sprung into my mind too, is this like, if you have, we're going so far right in like all these, the fascists are so far right. I think the biggest way and the only way to really fight that, because like everybody's trying to take baby steps away from it, but I think the
Yes.
only way to really do it is you have to go full on opposite of what they
Yeah.
are, right? So like the only way to actually get away from conservatism is to go socialism, Marxism. You have to look at going into that direction like a lot more than, because otherwise you're not going to get anywhere. Taking baby steps away from it, you're just going to get pulled back. And it's the right, like the way the scale is right now is everything is moving so far right. Like even liberalism is still like very right wing.
Yeah.
They think liberal and conservative are supposed to be opposite, but they're not. They're actually closer together than they think.
Lindsay, are you
I
talking
think the
political
difference
parties or
is
ideologies?
I'm talking
what
more ideologies, but
No, the
if you look
ideology.
at political parties, though, the political parties are not lining up with what the ideologies are supposed to be anymore. The political parties are moving more right of what their ideologies are supposed to be.
Happy?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think yes and no. I don't accept the fact that I feel like we're getting pushed more to the right than we are actually going to the right. I think that there's an intolerance of uh, certain ideologies in a capitalist world that just automatically have people putting another group of people on the right. And I don't really accept that as logical. I think that there's a coexistence that can happen. I do not consider myself somebody on the right. I will never vote for someone who adheres to anti-choice policies. That's a deal breaker for me. I will never vote for somebody that wants to influence somebody's right to parent their children through legislation. All these different factors, and the liberals don't partake in that. Where we can agree, like, maybe we're not as proactive when we're going after antitrust violators like corporations. And that's a big one for me. That's kind of like a contentious issue. And I think the liberals should be more aggressively pursuing the corporate acquisitions of homes, of houses and properties, right? And I think that is something that the NDP and the liberals should be working together on. I just don't think that a liberal government that is willing to work with the NDP to put in those different social programs like the ones that we have seen. These are all NDP platforms. We have the childcare, dental care. We have the pharmacare. Those are all NDP principles and ideas. And we were able to work together in two different opposing parties to materialize that, to realize that. And I think that's really important to remember.
I think it's very important that political parties work together for the benefit of Canadians. So I appreciate the more parties that work together. Isn't that the way it's supposed to work? Maybe I'm naive.
I'm
No,
waiting
that
for
is
politics to get boring. Go ahead, Radical.
no, that is the way. I want to go back a little bit to one of the things that we on the left have to understand is the messaging that is coming from the right. And I've talked often about the 3 R's of society, the things that people will unalive others for en masse. And that's your race or your region, your religion, and resources. And if we look at the messaging that's coming from the right, they're coming for you. They're coming for your jobs. They're coming for your religion. They're coming for your housing. They're coming for your culture. They're coming for your skin color. All of this is designed to bypass logical thinking and center all of their decision making in the amygdala. And that's why it's so difficult to reach through to these people, because they believe they are literally under existential threat. Even though we know, looking at the statistics, our crime is down, our economy is okay, inflation is coming down, interest rates are coming down. All of these things, no matter how much information you stack against that primal fear, it's never going to work. So for us on the left, we have to design messaging that counteracts that primitive impulse that the conservative side is running on.
Okay, don't take me wrong. When I said what I said, in all honesty, I was thinking of the other three parties because I've excluded conservatives from my mind. So I apologize for that. They are just not part of my life.
I can dig it.
I cannot get on their wavelength. They have no empathy. No compassion. No. I don't see. And again, maybe I'm missing something, but I cannot see conservatives doing anything good for Canada.
Now,
Oh,
Grandma, did you not see there were 18 conservatives that wanted to partake of a liberal plan, and
Yes, I
Polyev
did.
uh,
shut them right down? I mean,
They should
Yes.
leave the party. They
I
should
think
leave the
there's still
party and vote
progressive
as
conservatives
independents.
out there.
Yeah.
Another reason why I don't understand why. Okay, there's been, let's say the 18 MPs, let's take the security clearance. I hate to bring it up, the abortion, there's just so many
so
things.
Sandy, I saw a beautiful graphic the other day that somebody made on TikTok for us where they showed me the algorithm and how it was rooted to change and went for this last election, right? And so for like the left wingers, the algorithm Elon sent bots after us. So we were all just arguing with bots a lot of the time, and the traffic that went to the to the conservatives, or in this case the Republicans and conservatives alike, is misinformation, constant
Yes.
misinformation. So we couldn't battle that information because we were busy battling with bots.
And ourselves.
And I gotta say, I work in an office full of conservatives, and normally I would agree with everything you just said, Sandy. But there are a lot of women that work at my homeless shelter, and I have seen them have hearts. They're getting a slew of misinformation.
It's called the Fire Hose of Falsehoods, and it was developed by the KGB and Vladimir Putin. And it's a real thing, and it's been used by Wagner Group. They have a propaganda engine in Africa as well, in the Central Republic of Congo. No, the People's Republic of Central Africa. And they've been working to destabilize, and we've seen the results in Rwanda and in Congo as well from that interference. And I'd like also to echo what Radical was saying a few moments ago about the messaging. I think that in the U.S. election, we can still have the same priorities as we do we don't have to change our priorities. But I feel like in the United States, and sometimes here in Canada as well, there's kind of a preachy, pious vibe that comes from the left side when we're trying to talk about people's rights and stuff like that, and when we're demanding accountability from people. And I think that that partly had to do with it. But more importantly, sorry, I think in the United States it was a bottom line election, and the messaging did not align with that. So we were talking about people's rights and equity and representation equality, and we were talking about human rights, and we were talking about things like the economy outside of the United States and how that was developing and how the United States was a big player. But that didn't translate to people's plates on their tables in their kitchens in their homes. And people were still saying, all your words are fine and dandy, but I am trying to feed my family. And I think that messaging became kind of, they became tone deaf, right? Like, oh, well, enough people will vote with us. And they kind of assumed that. And so they just kind of pushed away people who, couldn't see themselves sacrificing anymore before they were able to provide for themselves. And I think that
I
we're
understand that.
as well.
I also think it
Can
had a
I ask?
lot to do with the fact that she was a woman as well. That is just an
It did.
anti-women society down there. Not that we have,
Misogyny
Did
and
anyone?
racism is very strong down there, so.
Yes.
yeah.
Did anyone happen to see that bill that they were trying to pass in Parliament where they were giving veterans? It has something to do with veterans. I seen it on TikTok. I can't say if it's true or not, but there's a Polya voted nay against the veterans. That's all I
Of course
remember
he
was
did.
but I
Of
don't
I,
know
course he
what
did.
bill it was, if it
he
actually
did
is
that
a
a few
bill.
times, didn't he?
He doesn't think kids should eat either.
If anybody ever asks you about his pro-choice, pro-life thing, and then they say, "Hey, Polyev has said in his platform that he's pro-choice," you can point to his voting record, and I think it's the one behind me, although my eyes
Oh,
aren't that great. But like, it's 5 different bills, private members' bills that were introduced during Polyev's leadership, if I'm not mistaken. Um,
yeah.
that he has voted yes or in one case no, which is the same thing.
Pierre Polyev votes whatever Harper tells him to vote. Period.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if it was an actual thing that he had voted down or it was something I'd seen on TikTok because I try not to believe everything I see on TikTok unless I have actual information.
And that comes down to responsibility for us as leftist creators, that the information that we put out there is correct and factual. And I'll often hold off on putting anything out until I know it's the truth and I can relate it back to the facts. Now, not to say, like I mentioned earlier, that the facts are going to work in this situation, but we also can't ignore that we have the facts on our side.
Correct. And justice and truth.
Well, among a number of things, but like I said, the messaging from the fact that people could look at a 5-time bankrupt charity defrauding shitbag and think that he's going to improve the economy tells you just how effective the propaganda down in the States is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
100% right, and thank goodness for the intervention of Bill C-11 in Canada, where we have at least a little bit of control, and I use that word lightly, over propaganda that comes into the country through various sorts. Like, I just don't see us being as bombarded as they are in the States.
Well,
I'd like to throw something out here. Any thoughts on what happened this week with Marlena appointing Stephen Harper to take over the pensions in
AIMCO?
Alberta?
AIMCO?
AMCO, thank you. AMCO? Any
Uh,
thoughts on good
Oh,
old
wait.
Albertans losing their pensions?
I would love to
Real
see his
conservative?
qualifications and what
Oh, no. You
garnered him
can't
the
be up here.
position. Oh, he's not a conservative. He's an antagonist.
Oh, yeah, we don't want that in here.
Not an antagonist.
This is a we're it's not a debate space essentially.
I'm not
It's a
an
conversation space and
antagonist.
we're not open to having ops up here. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Thanks for popping
And there's
by.
a reason why I have that account blocked personally.
Okay.
So
And she doesn't block many. She's very specific and
I'm very
thoughtful.
specific about what my blocks are.
Oh, I
Hmm.
block all of them.
I do too. She gives me heck about blocking them all. She's very thoughtful and mindful about what
Block,
she's
block,
doing.
block, block.
She's a
Well,
critical
all,
thinker.
all the PP 2025 comments are bots, and they're gone. They're sorry.
Uh,
Good for you though, Dirty. I've been encouraged, shall we say, by
Yeah.
several folks outside of the TikTok community to be more open-minded, more celebrating of diverse
Well,
views.
so in this area here, we don't do that. On my page, it's a little bit different. Um depending on the day. The last one I ran was just a think tank, so it was just all people who like were left leaning or center, and we were all just like kind of coming up with ideas. But I do debate spaces on this page normally on my own. So
You
yeah.
all know me.
But
I do it every day almost. Well, actually, I took a break.
yeah.
A little hiatus.
so any thoughts on Harper taking over AMCO?
I think it's super suspicious.
Smiley
Well,
face.
how can anybody look at it otherwise? I mean, at the end of the day, what is a former prime minister looking at that position at all? The reality is that they've been intertwining themselves into all of these lower end positions for years now, and now that they've cemented themselves into the lower positions, they're going after the bigger ones.
They seem like the mafia a little bit. Like everywhere Harper moves or he's connected to somebody, he gets a big payout. So, like from Saskatchewan, Mo gave him a big payout. Jason Kenney hired his son and paid him a massive amount of money. And I believe Jason Kenney also hired him for some work. The MCO, like it doesn't end.
So gross.
Yeah, but that's a reality of what we're facing, and I think Nerdy, you mentioned it earlier that we're past the point of going high. Going high has led us basically to the verge of autocracy here, and what we're doing has not been effective. Now, my personal belief is that the election did not go the way that it was supposed to down in the States. But what it brings up is that the Republicans are actually at their end game here. If they get in, there will not be any more elections, and we can expect the same thing with PP in Canada. They will rig the system, just like Danielle did, where they're getting
Absolutely.
92% approval.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that's that proactive piece we need to know. I mean, I'm personally thinking about buying some gremlins and feeding them after midnight
Think of it this
because
way.
I don't
We
know
we
what else
want
to
to
do.
fight. We want to fight where we're fighting back. We have to fight back. We're not going to be like Mike Tyson and just let Jake Paul win.
Basically,
Um
yeah.
Right?
Yep.
I don't think we're loud enough. I don't think we're spread out enough. We're not creating more groups.
Well,
We're
we're not obnoxious like the other side, right? The other side is super obnoxious, super loud.
Well, it's easier to
right.
wait.
I don't want to be obnoxious, but I want to be super loud.
I
Me
think
too.
it's actually the opposite of that, though, Grandma Sandy. I think we have too many groups. We've fractured so much into too many different factions of the left. We need to come back together to overcome
But
the
that's what
rest
I
of it.
mean.
At least
You
temporarily.
have to form a group or community to join another community to join another. I don't know how we can, and I've thought a lot about this. I don't know how we can create a huge group without creating small groups and joining groups. If you can tell me, I'm all for it.
But we have to find, that's the trouble, is we have to find the consistent message. And that's where the major difference between the two styles of propaganda are working between the left and the right. Now, one of the things that I always say is that Trump is partly popular because he speaks at their level.
Correct.
See a kindred spirit. They see one of their own. Because they understand that he isn't a particularly intelligent person, that most of where he's arrived has been through luck, through nepotism, and so on and so forth, and basically buying out his positions. But because they see him and he speaks to them on their level, they don't care about that other stuff. Where we're on the left constantly caught up in the gray areas, and we have to streamline the messaging no different than the Republicans and the conservatives have done.
Agreed.
I agree with that.
We need to
How
find
do
that
we
little
do it
space
boots
right
on the
there.
ground? Like,
Yeah.
let's
Yeah.
say I wake up tomorrow. How do I
From
start this?
from what we were told in the U.S. after the election, we were told that Trump speaks, just like Radical said, at a fourth grade level, and they don't see any of his crimes or his bad things as anything because they see him as a strong leader, a tough man, a person that can handle anything. And what they said we did wrong on the left was we talked over their heads and we were preachy to them like we were smarter. And it was not well received.
But
So
hang on,
I really think we need to start thinking. I've heard it come up in the chats and we talk about community, but we're not really getting out and doing the work for community. Those groups have been going to church together. They break bread together. They do everything together. They don't care what we think. They don't care what any one of us.
No,
They're not logging on to see what we're talking about tonight, right? They'll tell us we're in an echo
Well,
chamber, but they don't care what the hell we think. They're building each other up. They're hiring each other. They're hiring each other's kids. They're doing everything. They're bringing people, they're camping together. They're bringing each other to their land. They are really and have made community.
But if we do that, you know, again, we're we're going to get called out for it. We're going to be
But that's why we don't have to give a shit. We
but
have
that's
to
what the
learn our
narrative will be,
lessons.
and you know, like that's the narrative. I think focusing on that might take away from actually.
Do you think they care about any of our narratives, Happy?
I don't care about what they care about.
But you do. You just said what their narrative is. They don't give a crap
No, but
about
what they
our
will do is
narrative.
they will throw a wedge in between us by creating an argument, and the argument will surround ethics, and it'll be like, oh, well, they're not as ethical as they claim to be, because look,
We have to be there for that argument.
yeah,
And I
I don't think
submit to you, we don't have to be there for these bullshit arguments.
I don't think that we need to be, but there's going to be a lot of fence riders who are deciding. And I think when we push them towards the conservatives, it does the job for them. And I don't like dealing in absolutes. I take that from the Jedi order. But I think it's relative here. I think you can have those conversations, be aggressive, talk about realities, and even be a little bit condescending. But I think what you said about the fifth grade level, that is something that they teach you in public speaking, is that you want to keep your vocabulary around that, because it gets everybody. Like you're not just speaking to one group, you're speaking to all people. But I really think that in Canada, in particular, as Nerdy had pointed out, we're too fractured on the left. Regardless of messaging, we're too fractured on the left. If we can't coalesce for at least 8 years, we don't have a chance.
I think the
Another
biggest
thing, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was just gonna say to that point, I think the biggest thing is like getting all of us together first and then worrying about getting those outliers, right? Because you can't focus on the outliers because you still have this huge group of people that are still fractured and not together, right? So, and you can't worry about getting people from the right over to this side, right? They're on the right. They're going to stay on the right. MAGA is MAGA. Maple MAGA is Maple MAGA. They're going to stay
Never
there. They've already
changing.
got their beliefs, right? It's those people, it's getting all of us together first, and then it's getting those outliers and bringing them on, like educating them on that level. So while I agree that we have to keep the not talking down and all that kind of stuff, I do agree that, but all of us are fractured on the left, all speak that way. So we need to talk to each other that way and then bring the outliers in with the other language.
And you and I were a lot on the same page with reply to Happy. And what I was going to say is I do a lot of undercover digging, and I found on Twitter where every day a message was going out to the Republicans. They were that organized, telling them what to say to us, what comebacks, what things to attack, what things to get us, riled up. And their whole thing was distract us with garbage and make us angry and make us fight that instead of trying to bring us together. And I agree that y'all need to come up with some kind of centralized message and share it. And I'm not saying follow the same pattern, but get your messages simple and get them aligned to where everybody is saying the same thing. And that doesn't mean you don't fight the fight. It just means that you're all unified.
There was just a recent survey that suggested that 66% of Canadians believe that Trump's election was a bad thing for Canada and a bad thing for the world. And I agree, Nerdy, that we need to coalesce, but when we do, we have to have, as Ms. Strong points out, a common, consistent message. Have you ever watched the TV show West Wing?
I love the West Wing.
Yeah,
Okay.
I watch
And
it.
in the West Wing, there was a one session in the Oval Office where they're saying, "Why did you lose Texas?" And they made a joke saying, "You lost Texas because you made a joke about the funny hats." And President Bartlett said, "No, I lost Texas because I can speak Latin." I think that the reason that Obama is hated by the right isn't so much that he's black, but because he's brilliant and makes them look like fools when he debates them. And there's a quote from H.L. Mencken, and I'm going to read the quote, and then I'm going to just tie it up because I know everyone else wants to speak. Mencken said, "As democracy is perfected, the office of president represents more and more closely the inner soul of the people. On some great and glorious day, the plain folks of the land will reach their heart's desire at last, and the White House will be adorned by a downright narcissistic moron." That is a quote from H.L. Mencken. My point using the quote is this. If we don't recognize that Canadians are inherently decent people, I would suggest a good proportion of our Canadians would fight at Vimy, just like the boys did in 1917. I still contend that today, that if we don't recognize that they're inherently decent and talk over them and preach about inclusion, we are already an inclusive nation. Let's focus as we go ahead at getting the food on the table, at addressing those basic issues with a more fluid language that's applicable to a vast proportion of our Canadian people. Not to say Canadians are illiterate, not at all. I'm saying they don't need to hear the big words. That's why I want guys like Sean Fraser and Mark Holland on the hustings all the time. There we go. There's me.
Thank you.
You're good.
Right on.
Another thing that I did, I spent an entire evening having a private DM with a MAGA recruiter who thought that I was interested in switching over. I got a lot of valuable information out of that lady before I told her I was done. But to the point on Obama, they actually believed Obama is the ultimate, he is the top of the line devil
Yep.
in our whole political system, and they say this great divide started with him.
Well, I would absolutely agree because as with the skin color that I have, I've got to see racism from both sides of the equation. And when Barack got in, I looked at Mrs. Radical at that point and I said, there is going to be a price to pay for this because there is no way, with the inherent racism and attitude of a majority of Americans, that they were just going to allow this slide into wokeness continue.
Oh yeah, and Kamala to me, I was 100% behind her, but she didn't have a chance because first, a race in this country, and secondly, she's a woman and she had a double target on her back, and it's bad. But we've also heard from the exit polls on the right, we had so many excellent Democratic candidates that would have won it.
And I think it can't be reiterated enough that the right side has already formed a coalition. This is part of the narrative that should be going out. Every time they bring up this NDP supported, propped up government, bring up the fact that they're a coalition, bring up a fact that there's no enemies on the right, bring up a fact that, like they're clandestine activities. And what happened with Harper was his undisclosed his hidden agenda. Do you remember that narrative when Harper got bounced?
Yeah.
There was a hidden agenda narrative, and I think that kind of worked in favor of us, for us. And I think, like, we need to chip away at that. I gotta tell you, I think there's an election coming. I was listening to Chantal Hébert, and I think Justin Trudeau's going to call an election, and I think he'll do it before June, so in June we have a G7 summit in Canada. And
Yeah.
what Chantal Hébert was talking about, she's a journalist out of Montreal or Quebec. I'm not sure about Montreal, but anyways, she was talking about how um, a lot of the leadership from outside countries are kind of like new, and also like um, are tentative because Justin Trudeau is going to be going through an election in October, right? So, like, if he's going through an election in October and he loses, is the next party going to be able to follow through and keep the word, right? Like, so they're going to be hesitant to do dealings with Trudeau and will be on the outskirts. So, if Trudeau really wanted to just have a show of confidence, now that the polling has kind of started to fall away from Pierre Poilievre, he would call an election based around the need to have a long-term plan for the G7. He would call an election based around the lack of security clearance for Pierre Poilievre, and he would call an election for. There's another reason, anyways. I'll think of it and I'll just shout it out later on. But there's some good reasonings to have an election, and it looks as though, like, if we were to do it now, they say it would be a conservative majority, but I think when the other parties start really campaigning, it's going to whittle that away completely.
I would love to have your optimism.
It's easy.
I feel good for I feel good. Like I don't think PP is as popular
No,
as
the
the
worst thing
numbers are
that would happen,
showing.
yeah, the
I
worst thing that would
agree.
happen is if they kick him out. Like, if they kick out Pierre Poilievre and they put somebody else there, that would be the worst thing for Justin Trudeau.
I heard in
True.
conservative circles in Alberta, they were whispering, I don't know, about a year ago, and they were talking about that exact scenario. And they suggested that Jason Kenney would go up in his place.
Nah.
That would be disastrous.
Yeah.
They basically said he would be the
I think Jason
more
Kenney would.
conservative approach to a Pierre Polyev.
I don't think Jason Kenney would stand much of a chance considering how he was treated by his own party, and I don't think that the UCP has enough national attraction.
I don't know. I don't know. He
That's,
was pretty tight with
yeah.
tight with Daddy Harper,
Well,
and
if
we
he
all
gets it,
know
we're
that
perfect.
Harper's in the back pulling the strings, right?
If Kenny gets the leadership, then we're doing well. If somebody like Andrew Scheer gets it, we might be in trouble.
Do you think they would pick Andrew Scheer
Andrew
again?
Scheer?
He's the leader of the House, right?
He got booted
Oh,
out. They didn't even trust him,
By his own party.
right?
And I think that when you're looking for a win, you don't care where it comes from. I think Scheer would have a better chance of winning than Pierre Poilievre.
And that's the problem, is they're going to front anybody they think is going to take the numbers. And that's part of the problem with the conservative parties, both US and Canada, is there's no level to which they won't stoop. And like I said, to me, this is the only time that you throw in all your cards is
That's what I
when
agree.
you've played your hand now.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing in the States, because I was asking the question now for months, why are they willing to put things in the public circle that they know are going to hurt them at the voters' booth, and yet they put it out anywhere? And the reason is they already knew they had that election in the bag. And I think the Conservatives are approaching it in the same way.
And I think in Canada, our wild card for us is if we can come together in an official capacity, whether it's with like a joint platform or whether it's with an official coalition of all the leftist parties. But I think we put a time frame on that, 4 to 8 years. JB said something really cool. He's like, if Justin Trudeau had the leadership for the first 2 years and Jagmeet Singh had the leadership on the last 2 years, and that would give Trudeau, kind of a graceful, what do they call it? Slow walk in the snow. You know what I mean? Like he would get
He
to
needs a graceful exit.
he would get a graceful exit this way, so I could see that happening as well. It makes for a good story. I see Jagmeet as a strong leader, so I think that if that does happen, then we're still better off for it. And
Certainly.
also, if Pierre only wins a minority government, I don't think he's going to be able to gain the confidence of anybody in the House to support his budget. Right?
I don't think it would matter, though. I mean, I think he would try to play every move like Trump,
But
Yeah, every
step by
loophole.
step.
if he has a
Yeah.
minority government,
Yeah,
then
let's not forget PP's quote about "I will make it legal."
yeah,
Let's
I
not
know.
That's
forget
true.
That the notwithstanding clause thing kind of fucked me up a bit. Like I'm still looking to see if he's even allowed to do that because that's like provincial.
The Fair Elections Act.
Yeah, and
May I ask a question?
Please.
Does anybody not think that with all what I consider mistakes that the Conservative Party is doing, that by the time it gets 6 months before election time, he'll already have buried himself?
We don't want that.
Yeah, but then we're
6 months is if he's 6 months in and then we're going into election. I don't know. I don't know. I would be worried they'd switch him out.
Who, Polyev?
Yeah.
yeah.
I've said for 2 years now that he's a Trojan horse, and he's just
That's
there to
what I
sling.
think.
He's just there to sling as much shit against the wall, hoping some of it sticks.
I've heard this too.
And that's I've been saying that. I think Christy can date stamp me if she wants. But yeah,
But
I
that's
definitely think
but we have to understand that that approach that the Conservatives and the Republicans are doing is on purpose, that throwing shit against the wall to see what sticks. because that's literally how they came up with the abortion debate, is what were their base reacting to. And then once they figured out what the base was reacting to, they were all over it, and that became the consistent message. And again, it's those subtle differences between how the left and the right are messaging particular things.
I gotcha.
And they're saying like it doesn't matter. It didn't matter that Donald Trump didn't follow through on a lot of his promises, or that a lot of his promises were unachievable. It's that he was speaking to the general public in a language that they could understand about things that they felt were priorities.
Yep.
I think we can't, like, strategically speaking, that makes sense.
They
It does. I just want to just focus in a little bit on the time, and it's 7:26. And Nerdy, how are you for time? Are we wrapping up at 7:30?
Yeah, 7:30, please, because I have trivia
Okay,
at 8. Yeah.
excellent. Go ahead, Nick, Grandma Sandy.
I just want to thank you very much for giving me a voice tonight. I really appreciate it. I've learned. I've got new ideas, and I appreciate y'all. And thank you very much, Nerdy, because when you talked about the communities and whatnot, small groups versus big groups, one group, it made me realize that there's a lot more options out there for us to be totally united. So I thank you for that. And I wish you all a good night.
Same. I say the same thing. I echo exactly what she said, and I'd also like to point out that when we talk about communities and where they begin, this is one of those spots, and you'll always remember that when things come together.
And
Thank you,
Happy, if I
Happy.
can add one thing to the last point you had, is that no, they don't care what he said, but they also think that his promises only apply to them and that they are excluded for showing their loyalty. And that is hard to get over to them, that is not right. And I don't know if y'all are facing the same thing.
100%.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. No, I think the message starts with small groups like this, and us formulating ideas how we move ahead, because it's clear to me that what we've been doing hasn't worked up till this point. And the UK rejecting Brexit is a good start, and then we completely stumbled with the Trump thing. Canada, right now, to my mind, really is the swing in the world political stage. If we fall, the West is done.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And, and to pivot off of someone in the comments, they're not only misinformed and they don't believe that the law pertains to them. It's also they don't play fair. There's a lot of things they do that just aren't fair, and I'm kind of sick of it.
They're very immature. They're still on this whole "we won, Trump's your daddy," that kind of thing. It's so aggravating because they, instead of now listening, they just want to do the "my body, your body, my choice," all those.
Oh,
It's very, very middle school and under, which goes to that fourth grade talking points.
Yeah, it is.
Well,
Mrs.
I'm just gonna throw this out there. Do not forget, when we have to understand what our population demographics look like. 1 in 5 people does not scrape 80 IQ. 80 IQ is just functional in our society, and yet 1 in 5 voters are at that level. That's why our messaging, if we're beyond 3 syllables, we've lost these people.
Thanks, Radical. So, on that note, thank you everyone for coming to Beaver Politics tonight. We really appreciate your voice. This is a space for us all to come together and discuss social justice issues and politics and what's going on in Canada and the rest of the world. And we really appreciate you all. Nerdy, do you want to share anything?
No, I was just I thanks for coming, thanks for tapping, thanks for clapping, thanks for sharing all the live. I just wanted to touch really quickly on the one thing. Having ideas is great. But we have to actually start implementing them afterwards, and we actually have to we come together to come up with all these ideas, but then we actually have to put them into action. So I think that's the next steps going forward is actually putting stuff into action and getting it out there to every other group out there too, right? So that we're all, on the same page and stuff and actually getting together and coming together. So that was pretty much it. But yeah, thanks for coming tonight. It's fantastic. If you like trivia, you can come to my Mistress Trash Panda trivia tonight. We're doing Rocky Horror Picture Show. So
super
yeah,
fun.
that's all I really had. Yeah.
Have a wonderful evening, everyone.
Good
Thank
night,
you
everybody.
for coming in
Thank
and
you.
sharing some thoughts. Take
See you
care.
next Thursday.